Sometimes I don't know why, Lord, I have to sigh. Sometimes, but it's gonna be a perfect day. Trouble, get out of my way. I don't know why now. Oh, but I'll find out by and by. I don't know why my heart must bleed sometimes. I don't know why I'm so in need sometimes. It's gonna be a perfect day. Trouble, but I'll find out by and by. Well, Lord, move in a mysterious way. His wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps out on the sea, and he rides on every storm. Ooh, his way is so hard for you and I to understand. No matter how hard you try, I don't know why these things keep on happening. But I find out by and by. By and by. Oh, when the morning comes, when all the saints of God are gathering home. Oh, time. You tell the story. How we overcome. And we will honor and we will honor Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil. I thought I would go to church just for a little while before we get into our program. I'm James Bernard, your host, and that's a little bit of what my father used to sing years ago. He was a quartet singer, and every now and then he would break out and start singing that song. And when I heard that song today, I thought I would take you to church just for a little while before we get into what is going on in our city. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you remember those days when church was church. was preachers and real. And the church was a whole different situation as I go back and remember those days when the quartet singers, and my father was one of those quartet singers. And I remember those days kind of hit me today when I was listening to that song. And I just decided to play it to you for those who appreciate this, the song. You ought to say amen. Uh, because those were the good old days. Churches and pastors are totally different from what preachers used to be back in the day. When you say that, is it more about them or less about you as their parishioners? And that's a whole show within itself, a whole different uh, situation that we could talk about. But we got so much to talk about in this city and the things that are going on in this city that saddens me and should sadden you that we as a group of people in this city, how far are we divided on our beliefs, on what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, and who we select to be our leaders in this community. We only gonna get better when we do better. And when we do better, then things will change as we know it in our community. But until we decide to do better, every now and then God sends a way for us to do better. But it's up to us to understand it and try to do better. When we get to the point that we don't care anymore about each other, we don't care about who we put in office, and the politicians and the people that we put in office are so blatant with their neglect towards you that they'll put it in your face. And they will actually let you know it's all about the money. It's all about the power, the position. And I will keep saying that to you, and I will continue to say that to you until, as they say, the cows come home, until 2026, which will be next year if God allows us to see it. And then we need to try to make a difference in our community. I will continue to say that to you because it is about you. It's not the have versus the have not. It is about the citizen who resides in this city that we call Memphis, Tennessee. You're always going to have the have, and you're going to have the have not. But the scriptures talk about, and the poor shall be with you always. And I can understand for the life of me how individuals who are billionaires, who got enough money that they will not be able to spend it in three different life terms, but yet they still want more. And something else I don't understand is that when you know better and you realize that you have the power to shake the core of those individuals who got more but still want more when you come together. And when you come together, you can change your situation. But they have divided the masses of people. And you can see what happens when people come together. Black people, as we know it, our life changed when those preachers came together during the civil rights movement. and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the other, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm X, and Sir John of Truth, and all of the others who were there before us decided, said, we have taken all we gonna take, all we gonna stand, and we're not going to stand anymore. But as I look at the situation, and I'm looking at this young man that took and killed his girlfriend and threw his baby in the Mississippi River, he received today 2 life sentences plus 45 years. Young in his 20s will never see the outside of a penal institution ever again because he made a real bad decision to take a 2-day old baby, to kill the mother of those babies. For what? That baby, for what? Somewhere down the line, and I go back to the point of mental illness. Now, you can't tell me that you within your right mind when you kill the mother of your child and then take the child and throw him in the Mississippi River. Now, somewhere, either the parent dropped the ball in knowing that he had some mental problems and didn't seek to get him the help that he needed, or they just didn't teach him anything as it relates to right from wrong. And something my mother used to always say, if you lay down with a girl and you get up pregnant, you're going to take care of that girl and you're going to take care of that baby. And that's the reason I waited until I was fully grown before I married and ended up having 2 boys. I understood how my mother and father ran their house. They would say that there's a certain time that you're going to be in this house as long as you stay and live in this house. And that was 12 o'clock. You don't come through those doors after midnight. And that was the thing. No matter where I was, and you heard me say this before, I could be somewhere out with some friends, doing our thing as young men, Club Rosewood, Paradise, uh, Family Affair, or wherever we were. But when I looked down at that watch, I could make it no matter what part of the city I was in, ladies and gentlemen, I could make it from where I was in 20, no later than 30 minutes, and be back in that house where I lived and my parents ran that house. And when they said be back here before midnight, no matter where I was, I used to look and say, hey, it's time for me to go. They said, well, man, can't we stay? I said, no, I got to get back to John and Lucille Bernard's house. You know, once I get mine, that's something totally different. But under this roof in that house, I had to abide by what the rule was that they had set forth for my sisters and brothers. We had to abide by it, and we did. But you know, as I think about it, what all we did as a family, the church, when we went to church, looked like every night or every other night or every other meeting, we were there. You was in Sunday school. You had to get up and get dressed. And the preacher would come by and pick us up and take us to Sunday school. And mom and daddy, they would come later on at the 11 o'clock service, but we would be in Sunday school. Everybody had to stand and give a review of the Sunday school lesson. And we had to learn from that. In the neighborhood, children knew everybody out there in Douglas because one way or the other, at that time, you were in Sunday school. And at 11 o'clock, you was in service. After that, if there was an evening program, you were back there. And if there was a night worship service, you were there. And at that point, we thought there was a lot of churching, but in the long run, it was building character as it relates to who we were and who we became in our community, in our home. But what happened, ladies and gentlemen? Something happened along the way that we got lost as a community, as a society. We have gotten lost. To be a representative and a politician back then, there were few blacks, but back then, that position carried a certain amount of respect that you had for the position that you hold. It was never you was entrusted to be over a position and you stole from that position. You took money from that position. And then you go off and sit somewhere for a few years and come back, and then they give you a bigger position than the position you had. See, crooks are a bunch of snakes, and they playing with you in your community, and you allowing them to do that. As I keep talking about the election coming up, you're going to have to clean house to a point. You're going to have to send a message that we are sick and tired of the way our city is being ran. We are sick and tired of the politicians that look like you and I being bought by the money people. And when you put a person in a position to represent you, and you find out they're representing other people, they're doing the thing that they're supposed to do for you, but they're doing it for others. But yet you allow them to continue to do this craziness that is existing in our community, and it seems as though we don't care. The young people are out of control. Can you imagine what would have happened besides you being in jail for the rest of your life? What could have happened in the community that this young man killed the girlfriend and then took the baby and threw him or her in the Mississippi River? That whole family would have been ostracized. They would have been whispers and other things that went on because of the action of that individual. Where were the parents? Where was the leadership that could have talked to that young man, and that young man will not make it, in my opinion, in the penitentiary? There are certain things that they don't tolerate, in the penitentiary. Abusing children and old people. They don't do that. Being inside and incarcerated for 2 life sentences plus 45 years. Where did they go wrong? What happened, ladies and gentlemen, along the way to that young man? that was so misguided, that was so misdirected in his bringing up or in his common sense to the point that he's in that position that he's in that will be there for the rest of his natural life. I know right now they got him and he will be on what we call back in the day suicide watch. Because when it hits him and truly hit him, that he will never darken the doors of freedom again. He would never be able to go to the store or to walk to the park or to go to a movie. All of those things are going to sit in his head. When I worked the old county jail, I saw some hardened criminals sit down and cry like babies once they realize the sentence that they received. And you couldn't do nothing but just walk by and look at them and say to yourself, probably, where did I go wrong? Why did I not think before I reacted? And that's what we have in our community with the crime that's going on in this community. The young people are not thinking. You're looking, seeing how young people, three or four of them, are getting these semi-automatic weapons and going by and shooting up in the house. But you got to understand, you don't hear or see much of that today because of the security that we have in here by way of the federal government, by way of state government, city government, county government. They are working together to make it better as it relates to the stain that we have on this city. And I say to you, whether the security guards, National Guards, are here being security guards, there's still an element of security. The people are not doing what they used to do at night, ride by, shooting and uh, drive-by shooting. You don't see as much as that. And for anybody in their right mind that will say to you or anybody else that we don't need these people that are away from their home coming to you to serve and protect you along with other agencies, that you don't need it. And as I said on yesterday and many other days, the leadership don't know what to do. Your mayor, Paul Young, was speaking to a group of people and talking to them and say, once the security or the National Guard is gone, then what's going to happen to Memphis? For you to say that, that says to me, you don't know what you're doing in the beginning. You haven't sit down with the different branches of law enforcement and said, look, we're going to have to do better. We're going to have to start getting people who are qualified and putting amount of money out here to keep them here as opposed to going somewhere. They're not thinking about that because they're really not thinking about you. And that's what we have on the poor leadership on a local level. Then we have those individuals who sign off and think they did something great by saying to a judge, we need you to say that the National Guard need to leave. Well, the governor, Lee, has a short period of time to appeal it, but guess what? Even, and this is my prediction, even if he told to remove the National Guard, it won't be done because they are federal troops. And if he don't remove them, President Trump is not going to remove them. So what is the purpose of these local snakes that we call politicians that sign on to this lawsuit who need to be ran out of town? Because they're saying again they care nothing about you or your security or your safety. They want you to think that they did something big, and those small minded individuals who would say, oh, we don't need them here, God forbid. But I don't want anything to happen to them or to their family. But I then say to you that if something do happen, the very people who saying they don't need the security guard will be crying for the National Guard and any other guards that are here. Where were you when my child was shot down like a dog in the street? But at the same time, you are saying that you don't need them here. A fool. I once heard a great mind and a great teacher of mine said a fool is like his face, always stuck in some public place. And for those fools, those individuals who say that we don't need the National Guard here, you're like a fool with your face in a public place. Yet when time comes and it happens to you, you're gonna cry out because you're there because you are being played with and you're falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. Good evening to you, Marcy Brown, all the way from St. Louis, uh, Missouri. Miss you, glad to see you this evening. Hope all is well. But Marcy, we got a problem here in Memphis, and we know you got problems in St. Louis, and there's problems all over this country. But you all are doing something, trying to do better than what we are doing here in Memphis. Because you got to be doing better, because you are not known as the most violent city in America. You may have crime, but you're not number one. But this poor, weak leadership we have, Marcy, make us number one because they don't know how to lead. All they know is how to follow. And what they are following, in my opinion, they are following the money. And when they get out of that following the money, as I call slash the 30 pieces of silver, and they can't deny it because when it comes to campaign time, the 30 pieces of silver is given to them to get them to get reelected and hoodwink and bamboozle the people to vote for them. There's a time when we have to stop allowing other people to use you. It's not just black folks being used, it's for all kinds of people, races that are falling into that category when you allow someone to take something from you as precious as your vote. So many people died for the right. And I'm talking a little bit of day. We know we got plenty of crime that we can talk about, but I just want to put out to you your consciousness, your common sense, and say when is enough? When is it that we'll be like Fannie Lou Hamer, who stood up and said, and she done took all she gonna take, and that was it, and she started something that's changing. And what we have now, when the young people get other young people to follow them, the person that had them to follow them and that was doing a good job became a bigger fool than the people that's following them. And you see that. People who don't understand the process when you get elected to a position and you get a credit card, that is the people's credit card. It's not your card to use for personal satisfaction. You can't go shop with that card. That card is for business purposes. But yet, people don't understand the process and get thrown into a leadership position that they end up messing themselves up because they didn't know and they wasn't taught. They just were thrown into a leadership role. They often say, give them enough rope, they will hang themselves. And we have a lot of politicians that are hanging themselves in the city of Memphis. We have a lot of politicians, Marcy, that's running for office and don't know anything about that office. But they just can run for office in Memphis. They can be selected, not elected, to be in a position, and they can fail their position, go off the scene for 6 or 7 years and come back and get into the good old boy situation or good old girl situation and end up getting a job paying more than they made in the previous mistake they made. But we don't pay attention. We don't even care that you got an individual who embezzled, taking money from an organization, and now he's holding a position of leadership. Only in Memphis. And that's why, because only in Memphis, that's the reason we are. They should have put stupid on the front of it. The most violent, stupid city in America. Because when you are the most violent, then you are the most stupid. Because you don't act like a human, you act like an animal. And where are animals? And where do animals be housed at? They are housed in a cage. What do you have when you have people who act like animals? Where are they housing them? In a penal institution, which is a cage that they got to be told when to get up, when to go to bed, when to eat, when to go to the yard, or when not to go to the yard. 23 hours a day, you're locked up if you get that hour for rest time. You could not function in society that you got to be treated like an animal in a cage. You know why they have the gorillas in the cage? You know why they have the lions in the cage? Do you know why they have the hippos and all of them in the cage? Because they were wild and they couldn't be controlled. So they had to put them in something we call a zoo. But you want to see them, so you go to pay to see the animal. And when your animal is locked up, you go to see him by what we call visitation. Do you see the comparison? You pay to see real animals than you visit to see human animals. Because you act like an animal that when they put you away, one life sentence would have been enough, meaning he would never get out of jail. But when you say 2 life sentences plus 45 years, they don't even want to see you no more in society under no circumstances. Now, to those who have mental issues, And the politician thought it was more important to privatize the mental health facilities, meaning to get other people rich off of the sickness of individuals. At least at one time here, we have MMH&I on the corner of Poplar and Dunlap, which now the Barnard Children Hospital has taken over that part. But whatever happened to the mental health, when we talk about it, we get professionals to talk about what we need to do. But where do you take them now, locally, that you can deal with people who are having mental problems? You got to take them all the way to Bolivar, Tennessee on a long stay. You can observe them. You can call in for a mental evaluation, but where are they going to end up eventually? In Bolivar, Tennessee. Can the people get help? How much money? When you sit back and think about $22 million for a hotel, $22 million could have put a mental facility somewhere here that could have given the people who needed the help that they need. But it's not about helping you as constituents, as citizens in this community. It's about making money. And I just want you to wake up. I want you to understand that's what it's about. It's not about you, it's about them. And so when we take down them out of the position that they are in and set them aside and find somebody who will really fight for you, if we get back and we have to negotiate and table whether to give the fire department a minimum of $40,000 a year versus a 2% raise, and you say, well, we got to think about it. What do you have to think about? Those are the people, ladies and gentlemen, that putting their lives on the line to save your life. But we want to treat them like stepchildren. We want to say, yes, you put your life out there as a first responder. We're going to play the games and we're going to get fat like a rat on a piece of cheese. We're going to eat all we can eat off of you. And we really don't care whether you eat or not. You don't play with people's lives and these so-called leaders. You need some people in position who have the backbone, ladies and gentlemen, to stand up when all others are against you. Stand up and deal with it. But you get caught up once you get that position. And people were telling me, I was talking to a dear friend of mine and was saying to her, she had gotten position out of Mississippi. Noah went to school with her. And I was telling her, Marcia, listen, you got this position. The people are looking for your leadership, but don't get caught up in the okie doke. Don't get caught up in the title. Do what you're supposed to do as a representative of the people. And I was told so many times, we can't get you elected to a position, Bernard, because we have to change how we do business. And we found out later on the business that he was talking about. See, if your back is straight, can't nobody ride it. But they can ride it if you've been over. And a lot of our representatives are bent over one way or the other. To get ahead, they are like people riding their back, and they are not strong enough to represent the people. But we got to do something to make it better for us as individuals. because it's up to you. You're going to continue to suffer in this community if you don't wake up and try to make change. I'm Jennings Bernard. I appreciate you tuning in, as always, and being a part of us here on Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil. You can feel free to give us a call at any time. The number is 901 288 5779. You can feel free to give us a call. I'm getting you all set up here while, if you choose to. But we got a few more minutes before we will be done here for today. And as always, we look forward to seeing you on tomorrow. It is important, ladies and gentlemen. It is very, very important for you to wake up and realize that it's time for a change in our community. It's time for us to make things better for ourselves. We can no longer continue to go around picking up people from one position to a next position. You just think about it. There have been leaders or so-called leaders that have gone from the school board to the city council, from the city council to the state, from the state to the county mayor, and from there to the Memphis Light, Gas, and Water Board. Been politicians all of their life. They have had jobs, but they have been around because you recognize their name. That don't make any sense to me. Electing somebody that got a name that you recognize, that haven't put in the work. Elect people who sold you out when you had the Memphis City School, and they sold it out. Now it's Memphis and Shelby County. Shelby County is in control of the school, but Memphis citizens are still paying for the school. So my point will become, Patrice Robinson, Martavius Jones, what and why did you do that? Why did you fight for that when we still have to pay for the children? If we still paying for the children, we could have left the school system where it was, and we controlled it. And you see what happened when you did that? Look at the buffoonery that we have on that school board now. Not one of those individuals who voted to get rid of Dr. Fagan should be reelected. They shouldn't. And if we find out truly by this forensic audit that big deals being made with big whales while eating big meals, and people we know got contracts that wasn't deserving of the contract, but there was a good old fraternity brother or sorority sister, or they was connected and they made money off of you and still making money off of you. When will you wake up and tell the truth and shame these devils? And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going to continue to do, because whatever I tell you about anybody that I say, that they said, I got receipts in regard to this situation that exists, whatever I'm talking to you about. Now, Dr. Fagan, I wish you well. I wish you good luck. I'm going to try to get you on this program that we're going to come in and we want to talk about your ouster, uh, being ousted rather, as superintendent of school. We want to talk about your candidacy. I feel good about your candidacy and hope that the others who abide by it understand that we need to win this seat, because the last 8 years of that clown that we have had in there by the name of Lee Harris haven't done anything for you, but made sure your taxes was raised. It's time out for all of this. As always, I really do appreciate you tuning in and being a part of this program. In the words of my grandmother, she always said, if it's the Lord's will and the creek don't rise, we will be here tomorrow. We look forward to seeing you then. But always remember what I said. I said, trust everyone, but do not trust the devil inside of them. Have a good evening and be safe. Take care.